This will be Tuesday, March 1st. We're done with February, that horrible
Justin Bieber's birthday.
Justin Bieber's birthday. I've been waiting so never for this to happen. We're going to get into the information. Focus. There we go.
I know.
Hat day coming up on Friday. Does cost you $1. You get to wear a hat all day. Does get you a house point and a B point. If you have the notebook open, as it says to have the notebook open, either flip it upside down or put the blue sheet on top of it, because we're going to see how much information is still in your noggin to try to help you out. 1 week from today, you get a chance to begin your speeches. You'll be standing up and telling us what's happening and all of that fun stuff. And there's the assignment. Could you go from there? Yay! The first god to get a throne on Mount Olympus who gets to do all the other choosing is?
Zeus.
Go you. Zeus. And what do we say for Zeus? He is? King of all gods, the god of everything, the god of all gods. And the hand sign for him?
Lightning bolt.
Done without the actual flinging of your lightning bolt, because many of you keep a writing utensil in that hand, which means they'll go flying across the room, end up impaling someone. After Zeus, the next one to get a throne, the only one that scares him and has power over him. And what do we say for her?
Queen of all gods.
Queen of all gods. And then once again, the hand sign. It should be fingers up, because fingers down is a halo, and she does not deserve a halo. So fingers up, and then watch out for being a moose, which is Bullwinkle, a whole different god. And then she's also the god of marriage and childbirth, but we're not going to worry about that. Cole.
That homework that you just had up, I didn't hear when it was due.
A week from
We're doing it together in class.
No, that was on the board, the narrative.
The narrative, the speech, the one that's a week from today, next Thursday. Okay. And then, so after Hera, the next one to get a throne is? Poseidon. And with
King of oceans.
King of the oceans. Nice little.
Tuesday.
And
The swimming.
never lie to smart kids.
The swimming with the dog paddle or the.
And then, depending on how much drowning you're wanting to do from there. And then, your trick question. After Poseidon, the next one to get a throne is?
Demeter.
Hades. And why
Sociability.
does not like the whole being social thing, so he gives up his throne. After, then the next one to keep a throne is?
Demeter.
That's where Demeter comes in. And Demeter is the god of?
Grains and harvest.
Rains and harvest. And with her being the hand sign that we'll do for that one.
Lawnmower.
What you see the cheerleaders doing the dances. Push them back, push them back.
Turns.
And so they'll do the lawnmower. Thorn.
I didn't get my notebook.
Points. Go for it. And then Demeter. Ooh, your next trick question. The next one to get a throne is?
Hepatitis and blouse.
Non-Hepatitis. And also not Hephaestus.
But she didn't want to do it.
Hestia. No, she does want to do it.
She's a girl.
She does, but she
But she away after a long time.
She does get a throne.
But he gives it up to someone else.
Not sexist towards her, but she is the only nice god, and so eventually she gives it up as a gift to someone else. We just haven't gotten to her being nice, but for now, she has a throne, and she's up there hanging out with all the gods. Zeus is now run out of brothers and sisters, so the next thrones are going to go to children. And Hera has 4, but only 2 of them get thrones, and the 2 that get thrones are?
Hephaestus and Ares.
Hephaestus and Ares. And then the 2 sisters, Hebe and Ilithyia, do not get thrones because that's where the sexism comes in. He's like, oh, women. Nope. So they don't get them. And then with Hephaestus, he is the only god that is?
Crippled and ugly.
Crippled and ugly. And who is responsible for crippling him?
Zeus.
And how does Zeus cripple him?
Throwing him out the window.
Throwing him out of the window. And when he's on the island, he runs into 3 beings inside of a mountain, and that would be?
Cyclops.
The Cyclops. And the Cyclops teach him how to do something. And what they teach him how to do?
Blacksmith.
And how to become a blacksmith. So he learns blacksmithing from the gods themselves, well, from the Cyclops himself, which is why he has the skills. And what hand sign do we do for him? Well, every time that we see Hephaestus, he'll be usually doing the same thing because he's always working. That's why we go and rock on. Rock on. with your hammer self. And so you're going to be hammering, and that's where the hammer comes down like that. And that's where I get scared seeing some of you try to use the hammer. Brady, this is on the left-hand side because it's homework. I'm sorry, Brady. But better I notice now than later. I know.
Yeah.
This Tuesday is just not stopping, is it? Nope. Jeremy.
How many are there going to be?
12.
28. Oh, 28. Well, how many thrones are on Mount Olympus?
12.
12. So there's your answer. So we have Hephaestus, god of metalsmiths. We're going to hammer something. And then we have Hephaestus' brother Ares. And we've spoken about Ares before, because what is Ares the god of?
God of war.
God of war. But with him being the god of war, there's a bit more information that goes along with it, which is it's ironic that he's the god of war. Why would it be ironic he's a god of war?
Because he's the son of Hera. Well, no.
That-
Zeus.
he is the son of Hera
There's another one.
and of Zeus, but does not make it ironic.
No.
Because he's a wimp.
He is a wimp. And the fact that he is a wimp and a wussy. And so that's what makes it rather ironic. There are multiple stories in Greek mythology of him coming down to earth and getting beat up. Oftentimes he would take the form of a human and pick a fight with a human and then get beat up by the human. So go back up to Mount Olympus and sit in the corner and cry. When the other gods would find him, they would say, "Hey, what happened?" He's like, "I got beat up." Like, "What god beat you up?" He's like, "Bob." Like, "What god's name's Bob?" And he's like, "It wasn't a god. It was some guy I found in an alley." They're like, "You're a wussy." And so they would make fun of him, and he did not get along with the other gods. But to make up for it, he was incredibly attractive. And so Ares was thought to be one of the more attractive of the gods, but he was also a raging jerkface. And so because of that, no one liked him. So, to help you remember that he's a god of war, but a wussy at the same time, I'm going to show you how I learned to fight when I was a kid. Because I had a nerdish background, and so I was half nerdish. And so with the nerdish background, I learned that the face and the brain is your moneymaker, and you want to make sure you don't get hit there. And you also had to worry about throat jabs. That was always a worry of mine growing up too. And so you want to take whatever your dominant punching, attacking arm is, and you want to make sure it goes across the throat to prevent anyone from hitting you in the throat area. And then you want to take your defending hand, and that goes behind the elbow, and like a football face mask, you want to make sure you have the bubble fingers like that, and it prevents anyone from hitting you in the face, and it leaves the other arm free, and that way you can attack and you can spring. And so that will be, for Ares, our wuss fighter stance. I guarantee you it is effective. I won every fight I never got into. I finished 0-for-0 in my high school career. Anytime that you have a large, scary bully come at you and they're throwing out, they're like, "Come on, boys, time." You go, "All right, man, you and me." And when they hit the ground laughing, it buys you a lot of time to run. By the time they get back, like, "Where'd he go?" And you're like, "Magic." You can just walk away. So that would be Ares, the wussy god of war. Problem is, with Ares getting a throne, Zeus has now run out of Hera's children that he wants to give thrones to. So what does he need to do now?
Grandchildren.
No.
More babies.
Make more babies. So this is where friendships come in.
Maybe demigods?
The problem with the friendship is Hera has got a reputation of being really angry and mean, and the fact that she goes all cray-cray on anyone that's friendly with her man. So most women begin to avoid Zeus. Whenever he would show up, like, "Hey, baby, I'm Zeus." They're like, "Oh, no, you're not." And they throw a hand in his face and walk away. And he's like, "Oh, come on." So it made him unhappy. Eventually, he finds this Titan girl that he gets a crush on by the name of Leto, L-E-T-O. And he approaches Leto and attempts to woo her. "Hey, baby, I'm Zeus." And she throws a hand in his face. She's like, "I'm not going to have any of that. Your wife is going to go all crazy on me." He's like, "No, she's fine." He's like, "Whatevs." And she leaves him alone. She leaves him behind and walks away. So Zeus does what any guy would do. He goes complete stalker creepy mode and just starts to follow her around. Behind a tree. And just sort of follows her wherever she goes for about 2 days or so till he tracks her till she gets into a pond and goes swimming one afternoon. And he goes and follows behind her and he gets behind a rock and he's like, and watches her while she's swimming and he's creeper hand. And then watches her, and she keeps trying to play with these swans that are out there in the little pond area. She's like, come here, swans. They rah, rah, they fly away. She gets upset. She's like, oh, I wish one of you swans would come and play with me. If only I had one brave swan. Zeus goes, and he's like, form of swan. And forms a swan. And goes and uses his little anamorph skills and turns himself into a swan. And then swans out there. Swanny, 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 swanny. Swans out into the water and starts swimming around where she is. And she sees the Zeus swan. And she's like, oh, swan, will you come play with me? And he's like, and comes right over to her. He's like, oh, you're a friendly swan. He's like, and they start playing. She throws a stick, and he's like, and goes over, like, fetches the stick, and eventually gets to the point where she rides around behind him, and, like, jumps on the back of him. She's like, I'm swan surfing. And they play for an entire afternoon. Things go wonderfully. That evening, she tells the swan, hey, I had a great time with you today, but now I'm going to have to leave. I'm sorry, Mr. Swan. If only you were a real person instead of a swan, we could be together forever. But I guess you're a swan. And Zeus the swan goes, and he takes his little swan wings. He's like, swan, swan, Zeus. And all of a sudden, blink, turns back into Zeus form. She goes, swan, you were Zeus the whole time. And he goes, how you doing? And friendliness happens. After the friendliness, she gets pregnant, because that's the side effect of friendliness. Once she's pregnant, Hera finds out, because that's what Hera does. Hera is not happy to find out that Leto is pregnant with her man's children. So Hera confronts Leto and gets in her face, and there's lots of finger snapping and some head wagging back and forth. And Hera's like, were you friendly with my man? And Leto's like, it's not my fault because he was the form of a swan. And Hera's like, what? And they start yelling back and forth, and Hera goes, all right, listen, you were with my man, so now I'm going to have to torture you. And Leto goes, what are you going to do, lady? I'm a titan, bring it. Hera goes, all right, my man is the god, the king of all this land. Leto goes, yeah, I know. Hera goes, as long as you're in his kingdom, you can't stop running. Leto goes, not running right now. How are you going to make me? Hera goes, oh, I'm not going to make you. He is. And all of a sudden, a gigantic python comes shooting up out of the ground. And lands behind her and goes, meow! She goes, ah! And takes off running because giants, I don't know what kind of sound a snake makes when I hiss, and that seemed boring, so meow! And she's like, meowing snake, ah! And she takes off running. Giant python the size of like the Empire State Building, it's like meow, 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 and goes running after her, and she takes off running as fast as she can. Hera laughs evilly, wah ha 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 ha, and then just walks away. Leto continues to run, and the snake continues to chase her. She can't stop at any time, because if she does, the snake will eat her. So she runs, and days go by, and then weeks, and then months go by, and she keeps getting pregnanter and pregnanter. And then all of a sudden, a year goes by, and then more years go by, and she keeps getting pregnanter and pregnanter, and then decades go by, and she's like, all pregnant, she's like, pregnancy, pregnancy, pregnancy. And she starts running by Mount Olympus, and she yells up at Zeus, I hate you, Zeus. And after a while, Zeus begins to feel a little responsible. He's like, I kind of feel like I'm part of that. She's like, you are! And she keeps going by. He's like, oh. So Zeus comes up with a plan. Decides to set up a plan with his brother, who lives in the ocean. And that would be? Poseidon. And he says, Poseidon, you know how oceans have islands in them? Poseidon goes, yeah. Well, everyone knows that islands are giant floating land bobbers connected to the ground by a land string. Poseidon's like, yeah, everyone knows that. Because what I need you to do is there's a certain island, and I need you to cut that string, separating the island from the ground, thus making the island no longer part of my area. Poseidon's like, all right, buddy, I'm in for it. So Zeus sends word down to Leto. And says, hey, you're going to run until you find these woods, find the beach, jump onto the island, and then when you get to the island, my brother is going to free you, and everything's going to be okay. And he's like, I still hate you. And he's like, I understand. Found a picture of a pregnant woman running. So there's pregnant running woman, and could not find a picture of a snake running, so use your imagination. Snake comes running after her, and she gets to the beach, and she does her best pregnant dive, whee! Lands on the island. Snake coming right after it. Snake, get sassy. Snake, snake. There you go. Snake goes running after her. Right before the snake makes the jump onto the island, Poseidon comes up, does his little dance, boogie, 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 book, and breaks the line connecting the island to the ground, thus breaking the curse, because now it is no longer part of Zeus's domain, even though it's land, it is not connected to his kingdom. Poseidon disappears, and Leto is so excited, she's like, yay, curse is and she gives birth to 2 full-grown, angry baby children. And so out pop 2 full-grown, angry baby children. 1 boy and 1 girl, who turn around and they go, I hate you, Mr. Snake, because Mr. Snake robbed them of their childhood. And they immediately do what any child would do, go over to the woods and make bows and arrows, and then shoot the snake dead. Pew, pew, pew. And they shoot the snake and kill it. No, Mr. Brovicast? Yeah. How'd they make bows and arrows? With the sticks from the trees. Where did the string come from? Obviously, they used their umbilical cords. And so they were born like, oh, ah! And they went ahead and tied that, and then shoogity, shoogity, and they shot the snake and killed it. They were full-grown adults at this time because they spent their entire childhood in their mama's belly. Hera actually feels bad. And what Hera does is she goes, you know what? I understand what it's like to have your childhood stolen from you because you're inside a parent's belly when you really shouldn't be. And why would Hera understand what that's like?
Because she was in Cronus.
She was inside Kronos' belly. So she goes, you know what? It was not your fault because your mom made poor choices. So I forgive you, Artemis and Apollo. So Artemis and Apollo become the next 2 gods on Mount Olympus. And Hera herself agrees to let them come up because she feels bad about the whole torturing. Well, with how they killed the python snake, what weapon did they use?
Bow and arrow.
So in almost every picture you'll see them, bow and arrow, bow and arrow. Over yonder, bow and arrow. Over yonder here, bow and arrow. So they almost always have a bow and arrow in their pictures because that's what they get connected for. And because they were thought to be twins born at the same time, they also represent something else the Greeks thought were connected. And from their pictures, what is it they represent?
Sun.
Sun and the moon. Artemis was the moon god, Apollo was the sun god, because the Greeks thought those 2 things were connected to each other. For the most part, Artemis, she is known for her 2 things, hunting and the moon. Anytime that you want to go hunting for a deer, so that way you can have food for your kids, you would pray to Artemis. If you were playing flashlight tag at night, you would pray to Artemis. If you were a werewolf, you were just hosed. But you'd also pray to Artemis to help you out the hand sign. I did not do anything for the moon because it scared me to see what you'd come up with. So instead I went for the hunting and the fact of what weapon does she use? The bow and arrow. So you're going to go and channel your inner Katniss. And this is where I get to be scared to see how some of you guys think bow and arrow. Mr. Brovicast, my bow and arrow. No, Mr. Brovicast, look, bow and arrow. No. And so, yeah, it's just one hand straight, and then I pull it back. Mr. Brovicast, bow and arrow. Nope, still not there. So, you'll get there. Well, what about Apollo? Apollo doesn't use the bow and arrow nearly as much. He had it, but it was not what he was known for. He was the god of the sun, and he did drive the sun chariot. But eventually he retires to focus on his main love that he likes to do. And the main thing he focuses on is being hot. He was attractive. He was the most attractive god to ever exist. And so that's what he focuses on, is the idea that he was to be super attractive and mac on the ladies. Even more so than Zeus. He was known for being an attractive god. So he was the god of sun and hotties. Now, with him being the god of sun and hotties, he liked the women folk. So because of that, he became also known as the god of music, because chicks did music. He was also the god of poetry, because chicks dig poetry. He was also the god of art, because chicks dig art. So if there's anything that would help him mac on the ladies, he became known as the god of it. Zach?
I thought Ares was like the most.
He was one of, but even he was not as attractive as Apollo. Ares was good looking, but he paled in comparison to Apollo. Apollo, you look at him and you just start crying. He's so pretty just looking at. That's how hot he was. It was impressive. So to help you with that, anytime you see someone that incredibly attractive, or anytime you're in that much sun, most of you will have the exact same reaction. So you're going to fan yourself because Apollo, god of sun and hotties, so hot. For our next one, we have to go all the way back to when Kronos overthrew Uranus.
Yeah, what was that?
And when Kronos, and the dog barking, that's from someone's iPad. When Kronos overthrew Uranus, what weapon did he use?
The side.
The scythe. And every time, he uses the scythe and jumps up and does the choppy choppy. What happened to the chunks he does the choppy choppy to?
Falls
They
into the
went
sea.
down in the
Fell down. One of those hit the water out in the ocean and formed a creature. But this time, instead of scary monster creature, it formed incredibly hot and attractive creature by the name of Aphrodite. And Aphrodite was formed by one of these big blops hitting the ocean and floating around out there. And Aphrodite just floated on the ocean on a big pile of bubbles for years and years. Thousands of years. She's just floating out there during the Great War, during Zeus getting control. All of this, she's just kicking back, watching the sun, having a good time. Poseidon has no idea she exists because he just doesn't care, because that's just not who Poseidon is. Zeus has no idea why would Zeus have no idea she exists?
Since he's not
She's in the ocean.
Nicely done. He's not the god of the ocean. But then one day, she floats onto land, and she ends up going from water onto a beach. And as soon as her foot touches land, who becomes aware of her existence? Zeus himself. And Zeus, who's just kicking back on Mount Olympus, watching TV, I was like, TV. There's a hot chick somewhere. I gotta go. And he takes off running. And he comes running down to the beach like, and she's just stepping out of the water. She's like, who are you? And he's like, because she is the most attractive person he has ever seen. And instead of replying, he just wipes the drool off his chin. He's like, you're creepy. He's like, it's going to get worse. She goes, how are you? He's like, my name's Zeus, and you're the most attractive person I've ever met. But Zeus also realizes that being friendly with her would be bad because he just got done getting in trouble, and he does not want to get in any more trouble. So Zeus goes, you know what? I'm not going to be friendly with you. And she goes, that's creepy. Thanks. That wasn't offering. He goes, but I really want to stare at you all the time because you're incredibly attractive. So I want to bring you back to my house and put you on a chair so I can just stare at you. She goes, now back to creepy. He goes, it's all right, come with me. And he brings her back to Mount Olympus and gives her a throne on Mount Olympus just so he can stare at her and think she's super attractive. But there's a problem with it, which is nothing gets done on Mount Olympus because all the dudes spend all their time staring at her. The whole time they're there, they're just going, and staring at her the entire time. So all the dudes stop working. All the girls stop working because they spend their time staring at her going, I'm going to stab you in the head because all the boys are staring at you. And girls tend to be a little bit on the jealous side. So Zeus goes, all right, this isn't working because all the dudes are staring at her and all the girls want to kill her. The best way to solve this is to make sure she's not single. So Zeus decides it's time for her to get married. And he goes, Aphrodite, you're going to get married. She goes, woohoo, I can't wait to choose. He goes, that's hilarious. You're not choosing. So he decides to choose for her. She goes, well, am I going to marry you then? And he goes, what? Me? No, that's ridiculous. I'm married. I'd never do anything like that. And she goes, oh, tomorrow we'll find out who she gets to marry. Me too. That's for tomorrow.
Yay!
Gives you a reason to come back again.